Welcome to Sustainable Sessions, hosted by yours truly, Lucas and Lauren. Episode 4, featuring B12GIVE.
My name is Tony Colley. I'm the founder of B12GIVE. B12GIVE is a food delivery app that helps retailers with surplus food on site at the end of the day. We collect it from them, we rescue it, and we redistribute it to shelters within the hour of receipts.
Amazing.
Yeah, that's an awesome business. And
Thank
can
you.
you talk a little bit more as to like how you got into the like food side of sustainability challenge? Like Lauren and I like to talk about with all of our guests. You know, everyone kind of picks their niche within the climate change movement.
Right.
What kind of got you into this particular area of climate change?
So in my case, so just to give you some background, I was a banker for 16 years. I left banking and went into the nonprofit sector for 4 years as a development manager. I loved working in a bank. It was a fulfilling career, but I was at the same time bored and unfulfilled in my role. So I just needed to do something different. And I knew I had been volunteering on a lot of fundraising events that were happening around the city, because events is something that I was fully immersed in as well. And I really enjoyed that. I enjoyed going out and raising funds and raising awareness for a particular cause or issue that was going on. So when I went into the nonprofit sector, I had developed a lot of initiatives that weren't able to be pushed through my agency. So I went out on my own and decided to become an entrepreneur about 6 years ago. I secured my first client. And after 8 months of working with this client, I had no money, no job. I considered a failed business because, although I had broken even, I wasn't in a position to continue to move forward. I ended up on social assistance, and I became food insecure for the first time in my life at 44 years old. So I had to make really serious changes in everything that I was doing and everything that I knew as an everyday lifestyle for myself. And food insecurity, we see what happened when COVID hit, how it just amplified. But this was 2016 when this happened. Food insecurity it was a big deal, but nobody was really paying attention to it. I was suffering from it, and I just took steps to get out of it. And some of those steps consisted of me working in the hospitality industry with catering companies. While I was there, I read an article during this period of time about food waste in Canada. And at the time, it said that in 2015, Canada had a $31 billion food waste issue. And I thought that was a big deal. I couldn't believe it. I said in my response to that article, I said, they should just be feeding this food to the homeless. But I never really thought anything about it. 6 months later, I got a job with one of the biggest catering companies in Toronto called the Food Dudes. And on my first event, they were throwing out over 100 box lunches. And I, being food insecure myself at the time, said to them, why are we throwing out all this food? Why don't you donate it? And they said, we just don't have the capacity to do that. So I'm like, well, do you mind if I take some and redistribute to a shelter? And she said, yeah, we want you to share it with the staff, share it with the vendors, and whatever else you don't take, throw it in the garbage. So that's what I did. I took about 40 to 50 box lunches to a shelter that night, and I kept that going consistently every event that there was surplus food. About a year into this process, I couldn't rescue all the food. I didn't have enough containers. I didn't have enough bags, and I was frustrated above and beyond. I was biking to the shelter in the middle of the summer, sweating and I was like getting up. I was really, really angry with myself. And in that moment, an Uber Eats guy whips past me on his bike. And I just made sort of a side comment saying, I need one of those bags, because he had one of those backpacks on. And it would easily carry what I was carrying on my bike in 2 grocery bags on each handlebar and my backpack. I got home and I researched the bag. It was only $40. And in that moment, a light bulb went off and said, if you could, I wonder if I could hire Uber drivers to do rescues for me, and how would I pay them to do it? And that just created a domino effect of how I started researching food waste, researching food insecurity, researching what sort of programs were in place and how they were servicing these individuals. I was doing it from a very simple, cost-effective way where I was going A to B. I was going from retailer to shelter within the hour. So I wanted to keep that process going. And I realized the gig economy is one of the biggest things happening. We had, probably not anymore, but we had about 120,000 Uber drivers in the city this time last year. So I realized there is resources out there for me to be able to create this program, sell it to a retailer, and develop a strategy where I could then create this simple logistical process, moving food A to B on a regular basis. I kept going with this idea. I shared the idea with a few friends, and one of my friends said, "It's a great idea. You have to be able to show scalability, and if you only create a program for Toronto, investors aren't going to want to talk to you because they're seeing it as just a limited scope." I should share that the program was initially called Feeding the Six, and he said you have to scrap that name because it limits you to Toronto. B12GIVE, the name of the business, was actually a supplement program that I was going to embed into the business model, but I just decided to turn that into the actual business name. It's scalable. It allows me to share what we're doing. It tells you what we're doing in the name of what we're doing and running the business. And I just took that and I ran with it. I was able to secure, my app was being developed by University of Toronto software engineering students. So I didn't have to fork out hundreds of thousands of dollars to get an app developed. I have my MVP. I've since hired a program manager to come on board and work with me. And I'm in the process of finishing my app. So it's all kind of like
Coming together. Yeah.
It's amazing.
Wow, that was a crazy story. And it's really interesting to hear that you were at that point where you became one of those consumers that was, food insecure. So it's like interesting to see how it all played out into your business model now.
Yeah, and even your educational background too, when you're talking about, I guess your background in finance and then working in banking, and how that even translated now to when you're talking about scaling your business and you're thinking about the logistics and the operations. Like you have such an analytical, entrepreneurial mind, and it's just done so well for your business. And yeah, like honestly, I can't wait to see where you keep going. It's been an incredible story just to listen to, and there's definitely so much for it to come through in the future.
I guess like another kind of follow-up question for you is what kind of barriers other than, being in that position where you felt like you had nothing, now that your business is up and running, what kind of barriers are you challenged with now?
So right now, COVID being the biggest one because we're not able to operate. Just before COVID happened, we had received a lot of press so that the program went live as a pilot last November. And we got a lot of press in January, February, and March. And CBC did a massive story on us in March, which allowed us to really amplify our mission and get the word out there as to what was happening. And I started receiving phone calls from like University of Toronto, Tourism Toronto, Law Society of Ontario, Cadillac Fairview, like major corporations that wanted to take my service and implement it within their daily operations. So we have a huge sales pipeline to work with, thankfully, so that post-COVID, once the app is up and ready to go, we can just say, listen, we're ready to go, we're back in business. The one thing I'm trying to establish is to get grocery stores on board, because of all the food retailers that we were targeting, grocery stores are the only one that kept operating, but those were not discussions we were having. I did receive a call from Longo's, but still, once COVID happened, it's hard to sort of start renegotiating business deals with companies who are automatically, they're cutting their workforce, they're cutting their food processing, their supply chains are reduced. So I don't want to go in and start adding costs to them at the moment, but it's fine because we still have those contacts, we still have those relationships. I just need to re-engage them a bit. And once post-COVID, I call it our future forward, whatever that is. I feel that we will be able to take exactly what we've done so far and just amplify it even more. Food security became such an issue with COVID. All of the ad hoc programs that started popping up around the city, which are fantastic and are great. I'm concerned that a lot of them will fall off eventually because these people who started them have jobs. They have day jobs. They're going to have to go back to their day jobs. A lot of catering companies had started a meal donation program, sort of a paid forward system where you could purchase meals and donate these meals to frontline workers and shelters. A lot of that's going to stop because catering companies are in business to make money and they want to be able to service their clientele. So they want to be able to get those businesses, those events happening again and get that business driving. So I feel that once we get past this hump in the road, whatever it is, we're going to be able to really get out there and a lot simpler and a lot easier. The process of what we do is so simple. We're literally moving food. We're picking it up and we're dropping it off. So it's really not, there's no work. Well, there's a lot of work involved, but there's very limited work on the retailer's part. They simply have to punch in a number, press submit, and the order's sent. And we come around and pick it up. So it's really simple.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, and it sounds like it's so easy to integrate new partners into your system. And that's what that simplicity behind it makes it so great. Really, you're just taking this food and transporting it. It's as simple as that. And it's such a scalable concept that will really tap into food insecurity.
Yeah, I kind of just wanted, oh, sorry. I kind of just wanted to ask you a little bit more about the research that you were doing when you started to learn more about the problem itself. Was there any other kind of big statistics or big problems that shocked you when you were initially doing your research?
So I should share that when I was doing the research, it was ancient. Like I think the most recent information I had was from 2015. And at the time it was 2018. So I'm thinking, this is 3 years. Why is this information so outdated? But I realized one of those reasons was that food waste wasn't really top of mind when it came to climate change or environmental impacts. Food waste has always been there, but food has always been thrown in the garbage. And they weren't, if for some reason they were looking at energy emissions as the source, and of course plastic as the one of the core purposes of why we are in the position that we're in today. Food waste is now becoming top of mind for a lot of people. Even with the city of Toronto, they've implemented food waste into their Transform TO piece. But when I was doing my research, I couldn't find any updated research. I found a couple articles on Maclean News, and I found another article in Now Magazine, like simple publications like that. But in 2019, Second Harvest and another company called Value Chain Management Inc. Just so your listeners know that Second Harvest is Canada's largest food rescue charity, and they've been around for about 35 years. So they were working with, it's called VCMI, and what they did was put this comprehensive report together, and it's called The Avoidable Crisis of Food Waste. And what it does, it has shared all of the information that's current from 2019. It took them about a year to put this document together, and they went around and they did all of their research, and they break it down based upon industry, consumerism, the percentages of where the food is coming from, how it's wasted, how we can divert these things, what we can do better. It's a really comprehensive report, and that's where the bulk of my information and research came from, and it happened probably like 2 months before I launched my website. So it was super convenient to come out when it did. But other than that, a lot of my other research was walking around the city of Toronto and asking retailers what they were doing with their food waste. And I'm saying that we were at the time, I was one manager working for one catering company. We would do upwards of 10 to 15 events a day, and there were upwards of 100 catering companies in the city. So my immediate thought was, how many other companies like mine are throwing as much food away on a regular basis? And I just started going to all of these people and started asking them really basic, simple questions. One of the questions they wouldn't give me was what they were paying for organic waste collection, because that's part of the system, is that I want to make sure that we are the most cost-effective solution to what they're paying for organic waste, because you're paying for it to go in the garbage, where you pay somebody to actually take it and feed somebody who doesn't have food for the evening. So I wanted to really show the social impact piece with it, but I wanted to have those costs as well. I only had costs from my former employer, being Food Dudes, and they were paying upwards of $3,000 a month just to service their kitchen.
Wow.
And I'm thinking I could probably take, 20-30% of what you're throwing away in the garbage, and it'll cost you maybe $600 a month. So I would it cost you, save you those costs on that end by rescuing it at a much cheaper rate.
That's so incredible. I honestly I knew what your business was all about and stuff, but I didn't even realize how, from a cost perspective, how competitive it was compared to, like you said, they already have to be paying to remove a lot of this organic waste anyway. So if you can get them on that frontier, but then also from the social impact, that's just true.
A triple bottom line business model. All right.
Yeah.
I guess the next kind of question that we have for you is, what do you like most about being a sustainable entrepreneur?
Well, I guess the most, the one at the beginning would be being able to feed people, like being able to provide to those who can't provide for themselves. It's a very simple act, but giving back is one of the most I don't know how to explain it. It's the most heartwarming feelings to have when you walk into a situation or a shelter or a drop-in center or a community center. It doesn't even matter where you're going, and you drop off unexpected food for 30, 40 people. They're so genuinely appreciative of it. It's like you can't get that type of appreciation in your daily life sometimes. Like, not that you're looking for it, because I'm not looking for that, but when I walked in and started getting it, I was like, oh my God, I was suffering, but I started to feel better about myself because they were so appreciative of the simple act of me taking leftover food from my event and taking it to them. So I think that would be my number one when it comes to being a sustainable entrepreneur. Secondly, I'm able to combat food waste. It's something I never really envisioned myself doing. I think I may have shared this conversation with you, Lauren. I was not in the food waste space. As I said, I was a banker for 16 years and I was working in the nonprofit sector for 4. And on the flip side, I was working in events and I was always around caterers, but I was never working within the catering side of things. So I didn't really see what was happening in the kitchen. I saw what was happening out on the floor. And the food out on the floor was always so minute that it didn't really matter if they're throwing in the garbage. But now to realize that they had all of that food left over and it goes in the garbage because they had no other place to put it. They couldn't use it, they couldn't sell it, and they didn't, the staff took some home, but that was whatever. So food insecurity, food waste. I'm able to provide retailers with sustainable and simple, cost-effective solutions that they could easily integrate within their daily operations with no stress, no trouble whatsoever. So I love that that was actually one of my core factors. I wanted to make sure that the program was so simple and so easy that for them to say no, it made me realize then you have bigger issues in your operations than just food waste, because the program really speaks for itself. We save you money, we divert food from landfills, and we feed people in your community. So, why not?
It's a no-brainer for
It's
sure.
a no-brainer. What else? Sustainable entrepreneur.
Can you talk about some of the feedback that you've gotten from some of your partners that you worked with already? Like, what's their kind of initial feedback when you start working with them, and what do they like the most about the program? I know like we've already talked on a lot of them, but I'm curious to hear like what they really enjoyed about working with you.
Well, a lot of them just appreciate the fact that they're able to give back in some way. Their systems are not, their operations are not in place to have that type of system where they are able to take this food and divert it to somewhere else. It's another task that they really don't have the time to do. Like I can appreciate having worked for a catering company. Our job, the second we were finished an event, all of the chefs on site left the event and went back to the kitchen to prep for the next day. And that's a steady 24/7 task. That never changes. So I understand their limitations. And when I started this process with my former employer, they were my first client. They've gotten all the press from it because they were my first client, and they were just, I mean, yes, the free press is always great. But one of the owners specifically came to me and said, one, we couldn't have paid for this type of press. And two, we're just grateful that we have a place to send this food. So Food Dudes is a catering company, of course, and they own a few restaurants, and they have a side business called Pantry. Pantry now has several locations around the city. Pantry stemmed from surplus food that Food Dudes had. They didn't know what to do with it, so they decided to create a little canteen type kitchen outside of their own main kitchen. They have a little kitchen, a little counter there, and they were retailing the leftover food from all the catering supplies that they were having. And that's how Pantry came about. So it like, you know what I mean? It just add value, and it allowed them to not only create this other business, but now they're taking all the leftover food from both their catering company and that new business that they stemmed from that original surplus food, and they're making sure that that food doesn't go in the garbage for sure. So they are almost a zero waste facility, because there's still the unavoidable food waste, the food garbage that has to go to a landfill, but they are close to becoming a zero avoidable food waste facility. So that's pretty awesome.
That is super interesting. I had no idea that there was even business models kind of already set up in place, and the fact that you're even working with them that also speaks so much to your business model. Another question I have for you is, how do you think your perspective has changed on climate change by doing your business? Kind of like what you said too, you weren't ever planning to get into like the food waste space, industry, but now that you're in this spot, how do you think you yourself and your habits have changed?
So we were just in that accelerator together, and one of our business colleagues is the ring stick.
Yeah.
And I noticed, so once, kind of a weird story, but when COVID happened, literally, I'm going to say a week or two later, my kitchen sink clogged and I didn't know how to get the clog out. So I mean, yes, my mother's like, use drain or use this, whatever. He's like, you have to wait a week, let all the water run out for like a week and then do it, or else it won't unclog. So for a couple of weeks, I was using a basin in the sink in lieu of just running water and through that proper or normal service, normal system. And I noticed how much water I was using just to cook food or just to do a task. And I was like, oh my God, like I'm using liters of water just to rinse vegetables. And I noticed that every time I would take this big basin of water out, I would be probably spilling 20, 30 liters of water just from doing the dishes, washing vegetables and this type. So I've started now when I am washing my vegetables, I wash them over the dish container that's filling up to do my dishes, so that the same water that's rinsing it is going in to use as my dishwater. And when I shower, I turn the water off when I'm not under the shower.
So nice.
You know, like I do these.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to reduce my water use. I've always recycled. I've always had a recycling bag for years, since I've been living here for the past 6 years. So I've always recycled. I've always done that. But the little things like that, I'm noticing where I'm using less of stuff. I just joined a group, and I think you guys should probably join as well. It's called Impact Zero. And what they do is they connect organizations that are in this sustainable space. And there's a textile company in there that she repurposes old textiles and recreates these products, which she's apparently she's very successful. And one of my friends runs one of Canada's biggest fashion labels. And he came to me last year asking me, what do I do with all my textiles? Because you have this with food waste, can you do something with textile waste? I had him like, okay, well, that's probably a pillar that I could, launch a couple years down the road. But now that I see that she has this business already and she takes textile waste, I'm now able to broker this relationship and say, listen, this is what we can do here. This is what you can do here. So it's just broadening my sense of understanding of everything when it comes to sustainability. I was bartending at my dad's 70th birthday party, and I was throwing cans and bottles in the garbage because they didn't have recycling in their house. And my aunt walks in and she's like, why are those cans and bottles in the garbage can? And I'm like, well, because you guys don't have recycling. And she's like, no, you have to take them out. We can take them to my house. We can do it, all this kind of stuff. So, I said to myself, that's right. I'm an environmentalist now. I never really anticipated being an environmentalist of sorts, but working in the sustainability space, you need to be cognizant all the time of what you're doing around you to ensure that your footprint is as small as possible. The only thing I'm not doing is, which I should be because of my business, is organics. But we don't have the system to have organics here because where I live, the building just doesn't have, I'm in a storefront. So we don't have organics in our storefront. Although I probably could take them to the restaurant, but I never really thought about it. But my food waste is zero. I never waste anything. Everything I buy, I eat. But I also buy fresh food. So all the scrapings, all the onions, the peppers, the broccoli, the eggshells, all of that stuff can be composted. But because we don't have compost here, there's nothing for me to do there. But in aspect, I think I'm doing really well.
No, you're killing it.
Yeah.
I definitely see that a lot though across like apartment buildings, literally everywhere. Like I go to school in Waterloo, in our apartment we don't even have like any sort of composting, even though recycling's like not the greatest. So I think right now in a lot of buildings that infrastructure, like that business model is not really in place for a lot of these buildings, and potentially that's something that people should be working on, or like new business ideas should be coming through to help solve that issue too.
And just on that too, like it's just so true, like what you're saying. It just starts off with like a tiny task, like you started off your business and then slowly you start getting deeper and deeper into like the environmental space, and you realize, wow, there's so many areas that I can kind of hone in on and improve my lifestyle. And it really is a journey, and like that's what we try to emphasize to our fans or any of our listeners as well, is that once you start your sustainability journey, it really is just going to grow from here. And you'll look back in 10 years and be like, how was I even living that way in the past? Like,
Totally.
absolutely crazy.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Yeah.
I guess we'll kind of sort of start to wrap things up. So we kind of like to end it off with sharing a fun fact or something cool, maybe about your business or in your life about sustainability. So you can share whatever you would like to the listeners.
Oh my goodness, a fun fact about sustainability. Well, so the thing is, I don't, God, I don't know how to say this. Not a lot of sustainable facts are fun.
That's true.
So it's really hard to think of something that would be engaging. I will say this, that the biggest thing that I learned, that was one of the biggest stats I found out through my research, was that our food waste issue ballooned from 31 billion in 2015 to 49 billion in 2019.
Wow.
So 4 years, our food, and this is surplus edible food. This is not garbage. This is food that can be eaten. Our supply chains are just overrun. We have too much food that's going out every single day. Most of our food waste is happening in the processing and manufacturing side because they're not able to sell unusable products, whether that be bad fruit, bad, like deformed. When I say bad, I mean deformed type images. If they mislabel a box, all of that goes in the garbage. Like they won't just take the container, the food out and repackage it. They will have to do a whole new production and get that product out there. So all of that type of stuff is really, it's detrimental to what's going on. My food waste is primarily targeted towards retailers that have hot food prepared counters, like grocery stores that have those, that prepared food there, which is only 10% of our national food waste issue. But 10% of $49 billion is $5 billion. So there's $5 billion worth of edible food that's going in the garbage just from the retail sector every single year. And that just blew my mind that we went from 31 to 49 in 4 years. And there are Second Harvest being the largest. There's the Stop. There's Food Share. There are so many other agencies out there that are trying to combat this. And just from the numbers, we can see that whatever they're doing isn't working. I shouldn't say it's not working. It's just not, it's working, but it's not working as greatly as they would like it to. So I think it's a really strong opportunity for organizations or individuals, I should say, that could start businesses like what I'm doing now. I don't want anybody else in my just to put that out there. I'd rather just own this space. But there are, there are other facets of food waste that are out there that can be targeted and managed and overcome. And, just from that alone, it kind of amplified what I wanted to do, and it sort of put a fire in me to make sure that I did my part. I'm not going to be able to solve food waste, but I could definitely have an impact on what it's doing in our communities and to the environment.
Wow.
Yeah, no, and you already have made such an impact, and I'm so excited to post-COVID to watch you just really grow. I'm sure you're going to make an incredible impact as you already have. And it's definitely a topic that Lauren and I are going to look more into. It's something that we want to share with our audience. We try to get all the different aspects of climate change to our audience.
We're super thankful for having you on the podcast.
Well, thanks for having me. It's so great. I mean, I watched Lucas compete, and then I sat in the accelerator with you, Lauren. So it was really awesome. I'm so impressed with what you guys are doing. And I wish you all the success. I am going to send you a link to that group because I think I should be doing this for you anyways, because sustainability is something that we should all as a network, just make sure that we are in each other's spaces as much as possible. But it's something that, like this, I love it. I'm enjoying myself. You guys are doing great things. You're both so young. I wish I had done this when I was your age, but I don't mind doing it at this age because I have so much, I have my experience to back me up. My business experience, I have that working in my favor. And I've established a really strong network of people who own restaurants and are in the food retail space. So that's the benefit from it. I wouldn't have started it 20 years ago, but it's still great. I have an app, I never even envisioned owning an app ever in my life. For what purpose would I need an app? Proud of myself. one, to be a tech person, and two, to be cool enough to say, hey, I have an app. It's out there and let's talk about stuff. So yeah, it's been fun. So I thank you for inviting me over, and I wish you all the success.
Thank you for taking the time to listen to this podcast. If you would like to learn more, visit us at www.last20.ca. Until next time, stay sustainable.